Like, buddy, we've seen you in pantyhose doing some of the wildest stuff, dog. Like, it's all good. It doesn't even seem like it's behind you. There's plenty of press conferences where he's crazy story. I saw that. So apparently, when Michael Bisping was early in his pro career, someone tried to break into his house. He ended up fighting him off. Crazy confrontation. Someone tried to break in. Well, one thing that I had told you guys that we're seeing is Jon Jones re-enters the testing pool. First test back submitted. Like I said, he probably just wanted to see what was going to happen with that legal situation. Now, this rapper, I guess he's a rapper, Dave Blunts, he's a bigger guy. He announced he's going on tour and he's going to be crowd surfing. So what's up, everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Dose Podcast, episode 24. Got a great episode, tons of stuff to go over today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. This podcast is sponsored by Jackpack LLC, all organically grown cannabis right here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, as well as 1GM Construction. Tap in with them for all your roofing and construction needs. Let them know you heard it on the Daily Dose Podcast for 10% off. Lots of stuff to go over. Pretty good card over the weekend. Big fights coming up this weekend. Of course, plenty of current topics. We're going to break it all down. If you're looking to sponsor the podcast, tap in and I'll get you the details. Obviously, first things, we're going to get right into the fights from this weekend. The main event was Anthony Hernandez versus Roman Dolidze. Let's go over some of the fights on there. They were honestly pretty good. Some of these fight nights here and there are sleepers. On paper, it wasn't, crazy, but it ended up being pretty good. So let's see. Eros Medic had a nice straight left KO. It was unfortunately over someone I know, but, good KO by him. Jocelyn Edwards had a beautiful performance. The homie Kobe was in the corner. She had a beautiful uppercut to start it off. She was landing a lot of left hooks at will. It was a matter of time. She was just rocking her. Great performance on her part. Elijah Smith. I don't know if you guys seen this. If you haven't, go look it up right now. Landed the KO from a slam. It was a pretty good fight up to that point. This was, 50 seconds left in the first round. So they were having some good exchanges. Couldn't really tell how it was going to go necessarily. Looked like he was maybe trying to lock up. I think he was on his back, so the kid was trying to lock up like a triangle, and he got slammed KO'd. So shout outs to Elijah Smith. That was crazy. He shouts out Rampage after. It was wild. Julius Walker, he won a unanimous decision. It was a pretty close fight. He got rocked a few times. He rocked Rafael. I don't know how to say his last name a few times. Good back and forth, though. Overall, great fight. That ended the prelim cards. Now on the main card, you got Eric Anders and Christian Leroy Duncan. Man, especially for middleweight, Christian Leroy Duncan is very fast twitch, has some beautiful combinations. They started kind of, feeling each other out, and it seemed like Eric Anders was really trying to lock in the takedown. Just seemed like he didn't really want to exchange. He ended up getting TKO'd, spinning back elbow punches. Christian Leroy Duncan, very creative, mixes it up well. Again, especially for 85, that was a great fight. You move up to bantamweight. You got John Matsumutsu versus Miles Johns, who's, of course, a tough veteran. Close fight. It was a split decision. It really could have gone either way. They both had their moments. So, not necessarily a robbery. Close fight either way. Then you had Andre Fili edging it out over Christian Rodriguez. Of course, Fili's just a tough vet. Still decently fast. Great IQ. He always has good game plans and kind of switches it up if he needs to. Good performance by him. Angela Hill loses decision, of course. She just was kind of a step behind. That other girl, Lucindo, she was doing well. She had her game plan. She had more control. Shout outs to her. Steve Erceg and O'Day. Hey, by the way, Celsius, sponsor your boy. Steve Erceg versus O'Day Osborne. That one was crazy. The first round, it looked like O'Day was going to finish him. Very fast pace, landing tons of crazy stuff, doing his thing. And then in the second round, he just wasn't quite as there. He wasn't quite as throwing up a lot of different stuff. Wasn't quite as flashy. You could tell he was going to kind of start slowing down. Just didn't have as much output. And as the fight went on, he continued to slow down, and Erceg was doing his thing. So He ended up getting the decision. You easily give Ode Osborne round 1, 2, and 3 to Urseg. Pretty good fight overall. And in the main event, you had Anthony Hernandez versus Roman Dolidze. I don't know if Anthony Hernandez was the underdog, then whoever bet on him cashed in. Again, Roman Dolidze is one of those big guys, big bully, and it always seems like guys like that, when they get in these fights where they got someone who's willing to, be that guy with them, they always struggle, So he looked good the first round, and just kind of similar to the co-main. As the fight went on, Hernandez was just wearing on him. Hernandez is someone that's just good everywhere. Good pop, good striking, good jiu-jitsu, good, so he can hang in there and wear on people. Like I said, as it went on, kept going until he eventually got the submission. Tons of different exchanges. It was just the overall, pace and just keep coming at you of Anthony Hernandez. So shout outs to him. Like I said, a lot of these fight night cards aren't that good, honestly. And that one and last weekend's have both been really good. So definitely something I like to see. Now coming up, we finally have a big pay-per-view, of course, headlined by Dricus du Plessis versus the Wolf, Khamzat Chimaev. This is going to be a really good card, obviously. Definitely looking forward to it. Let's see what we got on here. Edson Barbosa versus Jakar Klaus. Barbosa back up at lightweight. That's a very interesting fight. I think Klaus might take it, just being Barbosa's a little older in his career. And Klaus is still looking good. He trains down there with Tim Welch in them, so he's looking pretty solid. At lightweight, you got Chase Hooper versus Alex Hernandez. This is an interesting one. I think Hooper, he's been looking pretty good at lightweight. Alex Hernandez is kind of 50-50. It's just kind of depends which version shows up. So I guess we'll keep an eye on that one. I'm gonna take Chase Hooper in that one. Jessica Andrade, Lupi Godinez. I'm taking Lupi Godinez. She's overall more well-rounded. Obviously, if Andrade, gets a hold of you or gets that big bomb, it could be a problem. But I think Lupi can pull it off. At middleweight, you got Gerald Meerschaert versus Michael Olizchek. Man, look at that. I mean, all these are pretty good fights. I'm going with Michael. Meerschaert's always just a pretty tough guy, kind of 50-50 fighter. So I'm going with Michael on that one. Bobby Green, definitely not going to call another man king. So we got Bobby Green versus Carlos Diego Ferreira. I'll go with Bobby Green on this one. He could either get the finish or, do the decision as he kind of does his thing. I mean, that was only the prelim card. Those are some pretty good fights. Now we're getting into the main card. We got Tim Elliott versus Kai Asakura. I'm going with Tim Elliott. He's always a tough veteran. He's still in there. I think he could pull it off. At flyweight, the competition isn't as stiff. No disrespect to them, so they can kind of pull it off. Jared Cannonier versus Michael Venom Page. I think MVP is a gangster and very, very ballsy of him to step up to middleweight, especially to fight a monster like Jared Cannonier. I think Cannonier wins by decision or even pulls off a TKO. I think he's just too big. I could be wrong, if MVP catches him with something in those elusive movements. You can't count him out completely, but that's definitely props to him. That's a tough, tough fight. Geoff Neal and the Brazilian gangster Carlos Pratas. Man, Geoff Neal, no disrespect to him. He's a very tough, very game opponent. I'm going with Carlos Pratas. He was still a young guy, still hungry, trying to show what he's about. Coming off that loss versus Ian Gary, I think he's very hungry, so that should be a great fight. In the co-main event, my boy Aaron Pico finally getting his shot versus Laron Murphy. Of course, I'm going with Aaron Pico by a second or third round TKO KO. One of the most well-rounded people in the sport. Trained boxing at Wild Card, wrestler coming up as a kid. At Jackson's, being around him, he was one of the hardest workers in the room. Super consistent. He's dialed in year-round. It's going to be super dope to see him finally on this UFC level. Shout-outs to Aaron Pico. We're definitely going with him. And in the main event, gosh, this is a tough one. Dricus du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. Now, one thing about Khamzat, he's been super dialed. Super dialed back home. He didn't go outside even here. He's been in Cali the last few weeks. He doesn't even really go outside. He admits that he has a weak immune system. So, gosh, he's been real dialed. Does he come out and maul him like he did Robert Whitaker, or does he end up kind of gassing out and getting broken by DDP? This is such a tough one. I'm going with the Wolf, Khamzat Chimaev, either by decision or a late stoppage, but it could go either way. I'm really excited. Overall, that's a great card. I mean, depending how the fights actually end in the results, that could be one of the best cards of the year. On paper, it definitely is. So definitely looking forward to that. There was some great fights this past weekend, some good fights coming up this weekend. Make sure you guys tune in. Let's get into some current topics. Been an interesting week, to say the least. Some funny ones out there. So let's see what we got. First thing, we're going to go with some BKFC news real quick. We got Yoel Romero finally signs to fight someone at heavyweight in BKFC. Goodness. Props to that guy. I don't know. We really don't know if Yoel Romero is 38, 48, or 78. You know what I mean? Those Cuban genetics. But he is a monster. I mean, he always looks in good shape. A bare knuckle Yoel Romero. I imagine that's going to be a very scary dude. No weight cutting. So shout outs to that guy. Sean Brady, he says he has a fight announcement coming up. He didn't necessarily say who. So that's kind of interesting. See who he's back in there with. Some other fights that were announced was Rafael Fiziev versus Charles Oliveira. That's interesting. I don't really like that, being that he just came off that, brutal knockout to Ilia Topuria. This is like in October. I personally think that's too fast of a turnaround. So I'm going to take Rafael Fiziev, because if he gets in one of those exchanges, I don't know. Only reason I'm not picking Charlie Olives is because that quick turnaround. So we'll see. Then we got Marlon Chito Vera coming back versus Faraz Zahabi. Ayman Zahabi, Faraz's little brother. That's going to be a great fight. I'm actually going to go with Ayman on that one. Chito's always kind of better than Nate Diaz. No disrespect, big fan of Chito. He more so he's always a late starter, always kind of trying to wear you out before he gets going. I'm sure this is going to be a 3-round fight, and I think that's what affects him in a lot of these 3-round fights. Sometimes he just takes a little to get going. So we're going to go with Ayman on that one, but should be a great fight. On a side note, I'm hearing more and more that they might be leaning towards Gaethje and Topuria. That would be very interesting. I think that's an easy matchup for Topuria. Again, no disrespect to Gaethje. He's just going to walk forward and see what happens. And I think, as we saw, Charles Oliveira said, look at his resume, look at everybody he fought. He said that power from Topuria was just different. So definitely, I think that would be an easier matchup for him. Got some boxing updates. Edgar Berlanga said he's coming back in December. I mean, that's interesting. I think he would have to expand his camp or bring in some outside people or go somewhere to really get to a next level. I think he does a lot of the similar stuff. He never addresses what he does wrong. He always just has kind of random excuses for his losses. So we'll see who he ends up fighting. I mean, I would love to see him and Caleb Plant still. I think Caleb Plant could put it on him, just stylistically wise, Of course, Berlanga's always a guy who's going to catch you with the big punch. But other than that, he can kind of get picked apart. We got Virgil Ortiz versus Jon Ennis announced for January. I hate when they announce stuff so early. I mean, it's not too far off, I guess, but that should be a great fight. I'm definitely rolling with Jon Boots Ennis. I think he's a great talent. What I hate to see is when these guys are coming up, they're smoking everyone, they're doing great, they're fighting often, and then that money and that boxing politics come into effect, and then they fight once a year, maybe twice. I would love to see him more active, but I'm going to take him over Virgil Ortiz in that one. I think it would go decision. Virgil's tough. He could maybe stop him in the later rounds, but that would definitely be a good fight. Keyshawn Davis, obviously the last time he was supposed to fight, main event in front of the hometown, ends up pulling or not making weight, so the fight gets canceled. Him and his brother and some other guys try and jump the guy his brother lost to, so kind of a bad fiasco. He's been pretty quiet since. Now he's coming out saying he really wants to take a year off boxing as far as competing, focus on some other things, kind of, check off some other boxes, and then come back around. That's interesting. I think, obviously, fighting is a young man's sport. While you're young, while you're hot, you got to go with it. But he knows what's best for him, so hopefully everything's all good. He's a great talent. He made a mistake. Obviously, he came in overweight. You got to come in on weight. But it's simple as that. Your next fight, you come in, you make weight, you put on a great show, and it's all behind you. So we'll see what happens. They announced Anderson Silva versus Chris Weidman 3 in boxing. Obviously, these guys are both older. We've seen what happened in MMA. In a straight boxing, I mean, obviously, no disrespect to Chris Weidman. He was never a stand-up guy, right? He was a wrestler. He doesn't have crazy boxing. So even at their ages, I'll take Anderson Silva in a boxing fight. At least he has some experience in there. So, yeah, I would take Anderson Silva in there. Both older, so I'd say by decision. I don't think he'd stop him. Pretty interesting. Now, Jake Paul was, I think he said that him and Broner might be his next matchup. Adrian Broner. Now, allegedly, Joshua just never responded, didn't say yes, didn't say no, just never got back to him, so they moved on. I saw a video of Adrian Broner. He said he didn't get the contract, but don't get it twisted. He said, send him the contract. Obviously, unfortunately, AB was a great talent, but he's always had a problem with money. You know, it's well documented, well known. So, of course, he needs the big paycheck. Now, if Adrian Broner just shows up thinking he's fighting a YouTube kid, Jake is a big boy and will probably stop him, unfortunately. I would hate to see it. Now, if Adrian Broner shows up in shape and dialed in and actually, you know, throws some punches, obviously his last few fights in his career, his biggest problem was inactivity in the sense of just not throwing many punches. So he comes out there and does that. He could just shell up and be boring and make a paycheck. If he doesn't really train, he could get stopped. But if he comes dialed, he could win the decision. I don't know. Could he stop Jake Paul? Maybe if he lands clean enough. But the thing with Jake is, again, he's still, like, Broner's way tinier than him. I think Broner competed maybe at 47 the highest, if not 40. So it's like, you know, again, fighting a really small, older guy that's struggled over the years. But he could use the paycheck, so I'm not against it. We'll see what happens there. And some other boxing news, I don't know if you guys saw, there was an interview recently of Oscar De La Hoya. He was on an interview saying he never had a problem with drugs. Buddy, stop it. You know, he said that certain people on his team and his family sent him to rehab, this and that. Like, buddy, we've seen you in pantyhose doing some of the wildest stuff, dog. Like, it's all good. It doesn't even seem like it's behind you. You know, there's plenty of press conferences where he's, you know what I mean, out of his mind. So, I mean, it's all good. You got money. Do your thing. Nobody's telling you what to do, but you ain't got a lot to kick it, my boy. It's definitely all good. One thing that I had told you guys that we're seeing is Jon Jones re-enters the testing pool. First test back submitted. Like I said, he probably just wanted to see what was going to happen with that legal situation, get that all situated, and then he probably wants to come back and win it at least one more time. I mean, if he's back this soon, does he fight early next year? Probably not. He'll probably wait to see who's the champ on that White House card. You got to have Jon Jones on the White House card. That's America, baby. Now, a crazy story. I saw that. So apparently when Michael Bisping was early in his pro career, someone tried to break into his house. He ended up fighting him off. You know, crazy confrontation. Someone tried to break in. Well, it turns out years later is that this guy was actually a serial killer at the time, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. But unfortunately for him that day, he ran into Michael, the Count Bisping. So that's crazy. That's bad luck on that dude's part. And, you know, thankfully Bisping was able to fight him off and have the career he had. So that's just crazy. I thought that was an interesting one. Now, the Miami Police Department announces Adrian Broner, Antonio Brown is still wanted in connection to that shooting from that Aiden Ross boxing event. Obviously, he's over, allegedly in Dubai, somewhere in the Middle East, taunting him and stuff. Man, it's terrible. Like, you got kids, man. You're setting a bad example for people in general. And that's just no way to live. You can never come back to America. And maybe at some point you run out of money and they get tired of you over there and send you back. Like, I don't know. Long term, I just don't see what the goal or the outcome is. So hopefully he can figure it out. It's a little hard, in my opinion, to try and say self-defense when you do that, right? When you run to a different country, you're taunting, stuff like that. So it's a little tricky, but we shall see what happens. RIP to an era. Now, of course, I was never a fan, but it seems like the Howard Stern show is ending. Now, according to reports, it was that he was getting paid way more than they were getting on the return. He was getting like $100 million a year for the last few years, which is crazy. I've never really watched the show. I kind of know what it's about. I heard that, you know, over the more recent years, like during COVID, he got real weird and, you know, kind of picked certain sides and got political and stuff like that. So I don't know too much, but I definitely know it's a big deal in the sense like everything must come to an end. So, yeah, I guess there's an end to the Howard Stern show. Now, I don't get into like controversy and politics. It's strictly more funny. So, before y'all freak out, but I saw President Trump is saying that some guy in Venezuela is wanted. If you get him, if you either give some tips on his arrest or obviously bring him back yourself, they're offering $50 million. So, me and a few of my homeboys might be in Venezuela for the next few weeks. Y'all hold it down out here. It's crazy too. I don't know if it's true or not. I saw ICE is offering like a $50,000 signing bonus, student forgiveness on loans. It's getting crazy out there. Y'all be safe. It's definitely getting crazy. Now, this rapper, I guess he's a rapper, Dave Blunts, he's a bigger guy. He announced he's going on tour and he's going to be crowd surfing. So unless everybody in the crowd is as big as the baby's bodyguard, I don't know if y'all haven't looked him up. Look up Kane Kong. That's a big boy. Unless they're all like that, my boy, you ain't doing no crowd surfing. Even if you jump on top of 10 people, you're gonna crush them. You better stop. He's just trying to make some headlines, man. That's crazy. A funny thing too, I saw. It's always like that. What in the CTE moment? Le'Veon Bell said in a house fire, "Why can't you just sit in your shower and not get burned to death?" We'll just leave you to think on that one. It was pretty funny. I got to give it to him. That is pretty funny. Why can't you just sit in the shower in a house fire and not die? I love it. That one definitely was hilarious. I saw a funny video. It was funny to me that Benzino, older rapper, he's like 60, dropped a video outside with his homies. Guys, I can tell you this: if he's dropping music at 60, his pockets ain't doing well. And it was just funny. Like, come on, man, nobody's scared of you. You're an old man, buddy. Life is crazy out there, guys. When you touch money, make sure you invest it and do smart things with it, so you don't have to still try and rap and act like a tough guy at 60 years old, because that's crazy, man. So, pretty good episode, guys. It was good to have everybody in. A lot of content, fights from last weekend, upcoming fights, current topics. We're going to end this on the message of the week, of course, before we get out of here. So never let life break you down. Don't stop dreaming, believing, or chasing your goals. Everyone's path is different. Stay the course. You never know when you're going to make it. It was something interesting I heard Wallow say is like he felt like prison preserved his brain because, yeah, he had different struggles, but he wasn't beat down financially, relationships, heartbreak, stuff like that. So the more we go through in life, the more we get away from who we are and our true dreams and true visions, our true passions. And don't let that happen. Fight to always be the inner person you wanted to be. Chase your dreams, chase your goals, and anything is possible. I appreciate it, guys. Episode 24 of the Daily Dose podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. We'll see y'all next week.